4 insane, true, scary door. Knock moments that actually happened. Say it again. 4 insane, true, scary door knock moments that actually happened. Because what you are about to hear is not fiction. These are real accounts, real people, real doors. And what stood behind them will change the way you look at your front door forever. 4 stories, 4 moments when someone heard that knock and nothing was ever the same again. Stay with me. Every single word of what follows happened. And before this is over, you will understand why the most terrifying thing in the world is not a monster in the dark, or a shadow in the hallway, or a sound in the attic. The most terrifying thing in the world is a polite knock on a door you were not expecting. Let's begin. It was November in Denton, Texas, and the kind of cold that pressed itself flat against the windows and made you grateful for every extra blanket you owned. The year was 2019. Laura Hendricks was 34 years old, a school teacher, recently divorced, living alone for the first time in 11 years, in a house she had chosen specifically because it sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, away from traffic and noise and all the chaos that had defined her previous life. She liked it that way. She was rebuilding. She was healing. She was finally starting to sleep through the night again. Then came the first knock. It was just after 11:30 on a Tuesday. Laura was in her living room watching television with the volume low, wrapped in a blanket, almost ready to go to bed. She heard it clearly. 3 knocks. Firm, deliberate, not urgent, not frantic. Just 3 clean raps against her front door, evenly spaced, like someone who had all the time in the world. She muted the television and sat very still, the way animals go still when they sense something wrong. Her street was quiet. She had no close friends nearby, no family within 60 miles. Nobody who would come to her door at 11:30 on a Tuesday night without calling first. She waited. Nothing. She told herself it was probably a neighbor, a wrong address, maybe a delivery driver who had made a mistake. She unmuted the television. She pulled the blanket tighter. She did not get up to check. 2 minutes passed. Then came the second round of knocks, this time louder. This time there was something different about the rhythm. It wasn't 3 knocks, it was 4. And the last one was harder than the rest, like an emphasis, like a statement, like whoever was out there wanted her to understand that they were not going to simply go away. Laura turned off the television entirely. She sat in the dark and listened. The house around her felt enormous, every small sound magnified, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, the distant sound of a car somewhere far down the road. She pressed herself back into the cushions of the couch and stared at the front door, which she could see from where she was sitting, and which was locked, she was certain, because she always locked it. She picked up her phone. She almost called a friend. She didn't. She told herself she was overreacting. She was a grown woman. She was a teacher. She had managed a classroom of 27 8-year-olds for 6 years. She was not going to be frightened by a knock. She got up. She walked to the door. She stopped about 3 feet away from it and looked through the peephole. The porch light was on. The porch was empty. She could see the top of the front steps, the railing, the dark street beyond. Nothing. She exhaled. She turned to go back to the couch. That was when the third set of knocks came, and this time they were not from the front door. They were from inside the house, from the hallway behind her, from somewhere between the living room and the back bedroom. 3 slow, deliberate knocks against the wall, like someone was walking through her house, trailing their knuckles along the surface of the plaster, like something was moving through her home in the dark. Laura Hendricks did not scream. She ran. She went straight for the front door, unlocked it, flew down the porch steps, and sprinted to her car in the driveway. She sat inside it with the doors locked, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone, and called 911. The dispatcher told her to stay in the car and keep the doors locked. Officers arrived in 11 minutes. They went through the house from front to back. They checked every room, every closet, the garage, the backyard. They found nothing disturbed, no open windows, no evidence of entry. One of the officers noted something that the other did not write into the report, but told Laura directly as he stood on her porch, handing back her house keys. He told her that in the hallway, running along the right-hand wall, there were 3 faint marks in the paint. Scrape marks, low, at about knuckle height, like something had indeed moved down that hallway and dragged something along the wall. But how anyone could have gotten into that house without leaving a single other trace, without triggering either of the 2 window sensors she had installed after her divorce, without disturbing anything else. That, he said, he could not explain. Laura put the house up for sale within 2 weeks. She moved into an apartment on the 3rd floor of a building near the school where she worked. She installed a ring camera. She put a chain lock on the door. She has not lived in a house since. She has told this story 4 times in total, to the police officer that night, to her sister, to a therapist, and once briefly to a local journalist who never published the piece. She does not speak about it freely. But she has never once stopped thinking about it, about those 3 knocks in the hall, about what was in her house, about whether it left when the police arrived, or whether it simply waited. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel, because every week we bring you real cases, real stories, and real moments that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about what happens after the lights go out. Subscribe now and never miss a single one. 40 miles outside of Birmingham, Alabama, there is a stretch of county road that runs through farmland and pine forest, past a few scattered properties, most of them large, most of them set back from the road by long gravel driveways. In the spring of 2016, Marcus and Denise Okafor were living in a farmhouse on one of those properties with their 2 children, their dog, and the particular kind of peace that comes from choosing distance deliberately. Marcus worked remotely. Denise was a part-time nurse who covered weekend shifts at a hospital 40 minutes away. They had moved from Atlanta 2 years earlier, escaping the pace of the city, looking for space and quiet and room for their kids to run. They found all of that. For 2 years, they also found nothing unusual, nothing frightening, nothing that made them question their decision. Then, in April of 2016, on a Saturday night when Marcus was alone in the house with the children, things changed. Denise was working the overnight shift. The kids were in bed. Marcus was in the kitchen at the back of the house, grading papers. He tutored students online and had a stack of work to get through. The dog, a black Labrador named Colt, was sleeping near his feet. It was close to midnight. The house was quiet. The property outside was dark except for the motion-activated light over the barn about 50 yards away. Marcus was deep in his work when Colt lifted his head. Not suddenly, not in alarm, just slowly, the way dogs do when something in the air changes. His ears went forward, his body went rigid. He stood up without a sound and moved to the kitchen doorway, facing the front of the house, and then stopped and did not move again. Marcus watched the dog for a moment, then returned to his work. He had learned to read Colt's signals over the years. When the dog panicked, he made noise. He paced. He pushed at doors. This was something else. This was the kind of stillness that Marcus had seen once before, during a thunderstorm when a tree had fallen close to the house and the dog had stood at the window for 3 hours, watching the darkness without making a sound. This was watchfulness. This was waiting. Marcus tried to focus on the papers in front of him. He managed about 2 minutes before the knock came. It was at the front door, not loud, not aggressive. A soft, small knock, like a child's knock, the kind of knock that doesn't expect to be answered immediately, that knows it might have to wait. Marcus stood up slowly. He walked to the hallway. The house had a long front hall that ran from the kitchen to the front door. and he could see the door from halfway down the hall, a large wooden door with a long, narrow window on either side of it. The porch light was not on. It was on a separate switch from the motion light on the barn, and Marcus had not turned it on, so he could not see who was standing outside. He could only see the shape, small, low, the height of a child, standing right up against the glass panel on the right side of the door, just standing there, not moving, just standing and waiting. Marcus turned on the porch light, and he saw her, a little girl. She looked about 8 years old. She was wearing a white dress, and she was barefoot. Her hair was dark and long, and her face was pale. She was not crying. She was not distressed in any way that he could identify from looking at her through the glass. She was simply standing there, her face turned slightly away from the door, looking out toward the driveway, as if she was watching for something. As if she was waiting to see if something was coming down the road. As if she was not there to be let in. As if she was there for something else entirely. Marcus had 2 children asleep upstairs. One of them was a girl. He was looking at a child who appeared to be in need of help. He put his hand on the door handle. Colt barked, just once. A single, sharp, commanding bark, the kind Marcus had never heard from the dog in 7 years of owning him. And then Colt left the hallway entirely and went to the back door and scratched at it frantically, wanting out, wanting away from the front of the house. Marcus looked at the dog. He looked back at the door. The girl had not reacted to the bark, had not flinched, had not turned to look, had not moved at all. Standing in bare feet in an April night where the temperature was in the low 40s, not shivering, not looking at the door, just waiting. He took his hand off the handle. He called out through the door, asking if she was okay, if she needed help. She did not respond. He asked again. She did not turn. He called his wife, who told him to call 911 and under no circumstances to open the door. He called 911. The dispatcher told him to stay on the line. He watched the girl through the glass while he waited. For 9 minutes, she stood there. She did not move. She did not look at the door or at him or at the light above the porch. She looked at the driveway. Then the motion light on the barn turned on. Something had triggered it out in the dark beyond the house, and the girl looked at it. For the first time she moved. She turned her head and looked at the barn, and then she walked off the porch. She walked in the direction of the barn light, across the dark yard, and disappeared into the space beyond the edge of the porch light's reach. By the time the sheriff's deputies arrived, there was no child anywhere on the property. They searched with flashlights. They found no footprints in the soft mud near the barn, where the ground was damp from recent rain. No impressions in the grass, no sign that anyone had walked across the yard at all. One deputy spent additional time looking near the tree line at the edge of the property. He found nothing. Marcus does not have a clean explanation for this. He does not claim supernatural origin. He does not tell this story to entertain. He tells it because it happened, and because he cannot reconcile the details, the temperature, the bare feet, the stillness, the silence, the barn light going on, and mostly the question he still cannot answer, if there was something out near the barn that triggered that light, and if the child walked toward it. What was she walking toward? And why was she standing at his door to begin with? Right now, before you move on to the next story, drop a comment below and write exactly this. I heard the knock. Because if you're still watching, you know what that means. You know you're already in this with me. Write it right now, and let me see you there. Portland, Oregon, February 2021. The pandemic was still pressing its weight down on everything, and Garrett Nolan was deep inside it, the way a lot of people were. Working from home, rarely going out, spending too much time with his own thoughts in a small apartment on the 4th floor of a building in the northeast part of the city. He was 31 years old, single, employed as a software developer, and comfortable in his solitude in the way that people who are genuinely introverted are, not suffering from isolation, but inhabiting it, enjoying the quiet, the routine, the particular relief of days that pass without unexpected intrusion. His neighbors were mostly professionals. The building was well managed, the hallways were usually quiet. He knew his neighbors by sight, but not by name, the way you do in cities, the way most people prefer it. His routine was airtight. He ordered groceries online. He worked during the day and read or watched films in the evenings. He rarely had visitors, and when he did, he knew about them in advance. On the 7th of February, a Sunday evening around 9 o'clock, Garrett heard a knock at his apartment door. This alone was not alarming. Deliveries sometimes came late. A neighbor had once knocked to ask about a package that had been delivered to the wrong unit. It was a building with 4 floors and 12 units. Things happened. But this knock was different from the first second because of what came after it. Before Garrett had even gotten up from his desk, before he had taken a single step toward the door, the voice came. It came from the other side of the door, low and calm, and it said his name, not his last name, not a formal introduction. His first name, quietly, conversationally, the way someone who knows you says your name when they know you're right there on the other side of a door. Garrett. Just that. Just his name. He froze. He sat at his desk, and he did not move, and he worked through every possible explanation as quickly as he could. Someone he knew, someone playing a prank, a neighbor who somehow knew his name from a delivery label or a package in the lobby. A friend he had forgotten was coming over. He worked through them all in the time it took to breathe twice, and he found none of them satisfying, because the quality of the voice had something in it he could not name. A certainty, a comfort, as if whoever was on the other side of that door expected no resistance, expected the door to simply open because they had asked. He got up slowly and went to the door and looked through the peephole. He saw a man, white male, middle-aged, wearing a grey jacket, standing directly in front of the door, hands at his sides. He was not looking at the door. He was looking down the hallway, to the left, away from the peephole, like he was watching for something. The same quality that Marcus Okafor had noticed in the barefoot girl. The waiting, the watching for something else, as if the knock was not entirely about the person inside. Garrett did not recognize the man. He was certain of that. Not a neighbor. Not anyone he had ever seen in the building before. He asked through the door who it was. The man said nothing for a moment. Then he said Garrett again. Just the name, nothing else. Garrett asked what he wanted. The man said in a voice that was neither threatening nor distressed, genuinely conversational, unhurried, "I just need you to open the door for a minute." That was it. No context, no explanation, no reason given. Just the instruction, delivered as if it were a reasonable request between people who had a prior relationship, between people for whom opening a door would be a natural and unremarkable thing. "I just need you to open the door for a minute." Garrett stepped back from the door. He did not engage further. He went to his phone and called the building manager, who did not answer. He sent a message. He stood in his apartment listening. After a long moment of silence, he heard the man move. He heard the quiet sound of footsteps in the hallway, slow, unhurried, moving not toward the elevator or the stairwell, but toward the far end of the hallway where there was nothing, no exit, no other apartment, just a wall and a small storage closet that was always locked. The footsteps reached the far end of the hallway and stopped. Garrett stood at his door and listened for 3 full minutes. No returning footsteps, no elevator sound, no stairwell door, nothing. He looked through the peephole again. The hallway was empty. He did not open the door that night. He did not leave his apartment at all. The following morning he spoke to the building manager, who told him that no visitors had been logged for the building that evening, that the exterior door required a key code, and that no one had complained of any similar experience. Security footage from the lobby showed nothing entering the building between 7 and 11 p.m. that was unusual. The hallway camera, however, had been experiencing an intermittent technical issue, and the footage from that stretch of hallway on that particular evening was unavailable. Whether through malfunction or interference, the record for that hallway camera on that night was simply gone. Garrett is a methodical person. He does not rush to conclusions. He has considered every rational explanation available to him. He acknowledges he cannot rule them all out. But he also cannot explain how anyone who did not know him, who had no relationship with him, who had gotten into a secure building without being logged, could have known his name. Just his name. In the dark. On a Sunday evening in February, standing outside his door and looking the other way. If you watched all the way to this point and felt something, do us both a favor. Tap that like button right now and share this video with someone who's brave enough to watch it. You know who they are. This last story comes from a family in rural Vermont, from a house that has been in the same family for 3 generations. And it comes from a man named Daniel Westbrook, who is now in his mid-50s, and who has never publicly told this account in detail until the version you are about to hear. Daniel grew up in the house. He left it at 18 to go to college, came back in his 30s after his parents passed, and has lived there with his wife and youngest daughter since 2008. It is the kind of house that accumulates history the way old houses do, the kind with floors that hold the sound of every footstep that ever crossed them, walls that have absorbed 100 winters, a staircase that was built in 1923 and has never been replaced. It is not a house that Daniel or his family describes as frightening. It is simply old. It is simply full. It is simply, as Daniel puts it, aware of itself in a way that newer houses are not. The incident he describes happened on a night in October 2017. His wife was away visiting her sister in Massachusetts. His daughter, then 15, was asleep upstairs. Daniel was in his study at the front of the house, on the first floor, sitting with a glass of wine and a book, enjoying the rare quiet of a house that was not entirely his own, but that held him as completely as any place he had ever been. It was close to midnight. The fire in the study's small fireplace had burned down to coals. Outside, the wind moved through the trees on the property with the particular sound of late October in New England, that dry leaf rushing sound that carries a note of unease beneath its beauty, that sounds almost like movement, almost like breath, almost like the sound of something large shifting position just beyond where the light falls. The knock came not from the front door. It came from the back of the house, from the door that connected the back hallway to the small mudroom that in turn connected to the rear of the property. It was a heavy knock. Not aggressive, not frantic, but heavy, the knock of large knuckles, the knock of someone with physical weight behind their hand, and it came 3 times in a slow, deliberate rhythm, and then stopped. Daniel set down his book. He set down his wine. He got up from his chair and stood in the study doorway listening. The knock did not repeat. He walked through the first floor toward the back of the house. He turned on the back hallway light. He went to the mudroom door and listened. Nothing from outside. He looked through the small window set into the mudroom's exterior wall. The backyard was lit faintly by the ambient light of a half-moon. He could see the first 30 or 40 feet of the yard, the grass, the edge of the garden, the beginning of the tree line beyond. He could see nothing moving. He could see no one standing there. He stood for several minutes. He checked the back door and the mudroom's exterior door, both locked. He checked the windows. Everything secured. He turned off the mudroom light and went back toward the front of the house. He was at the bottom of the staircase when he heard his daughter's voice from the top of the stairs. She was standing at the top in the dark, wearing her pajamas, her hair loose around her face. She had heard the knocking, too. She wanted to know who was at the door. He told her no one. He told her everything was fine. He told her to go back to bed. She said okay. She started to turn toward her room. Then she stopped. She turned back. She looked down at him from the top of the stairs, and her face in the dark was entirely calm. She said, "Dad, there's somebody on the stairs." Daniel looked up at her. He looked at the staircase. It was narrow, with a landing halfway up where it turned 90 degrees, and from where he was standing, he could see only the first 8 steps and the underside of the landing above. His daughter was at the top. Between them was a stretch of staircase he could not fully see. He asked her what she meant. She said it again quietly, without fear, in the tone of someone simply stating a fact. "There's somebody on the stairs." He asked if she could see someone. She said no, but she could feel it. She said the air on the stairs had changed. She said it felt like the feeling you get when you walk into a room where someone was standing moments before. That residual warmth, that sense of recently vacated space, except it was not warm on the stairs. It was cold. The kind of cold, she said, that doesn't belong to a house. The kind of cold that has weight. Daniel began walking up the stairs. He walked slowly, one hand on the rail, watching the landing above him. As he climbed through the first 4 steps, he felt it himself. He has described this in multiple private conversations since that night, and he uses the same language every time. He says it felt like walking through a doorway into a different room. Not a physical sensation, not a temperature change he could measure, but a quality in the air, a change in the pressure of the space around him, a sense that the staircase was occupied in some way he could not see but could not deny. He reached the landing. He stood there for a moment. The feeling intensified. He says it felt like standing directly next to someone he could not see, like having someone's shoulder almost touching his in the dark. He made himself breathe. He made himself keep moving. He climbed the remaining steps to the top. His daughter had not moved. She was watching him. When he reached her, she reached out and took his hand, which she had not done since she was a small child. They stood together at the top of the stairs and looked down at the landing below. Whatever Daniel had felt on the staircase, whatever had been there, it was gone. The air was ordinary again. The house was simply a house. He made a sweep of the property the next morning in daylight, methodically. He found nothing at the back of the house, nothing on the rear steps, nothing to explain the knocking. He spoke to his daughter over breakfast. She was calm. She was clear. She was certain. She did not dress it up or dramatize it. She said only that she had heard the knock, and that she had come to the top of the stairs because she was worried about him, and that when she looked down, she felt immediately that something was between them on that staircase, something that did not belong there, and that when he walked through it, she had felt it leave. She has not mentioned it since. She is in her early 20s now, living in another state. But Daniel says that when she comes home to visit, she always takes the stairs quickly. She always keeps her hand on the rail, and she never lingers on the landing. These 4 stories, Laura in Texas, Marcus in Alabama, Garrett in Oregon, Daniel in Vermont, share one element that none of the people involved can fully explain. In each case, whatever was at the door, whatever knocked, showed no aggression, no threat, no violent intent. Each thing simply arrived, waited, made itself known. And in 3 of the 4 cases, left before it could be confronted. This is what makes these accounts different from what you might expect from a list with a title like the one at the top of this video. The horror here is not in violence. The horror is in the patience. The horror is in the purpose. Whatever was at these doors, it came knowing exactly where it was going. It knocked with the certainty of something that had already decided to be there. And in at least one case, in the hall of a house in Denton, Texas, it may have already been inside before it knocked at all. There are many ways to be afraid of the world. There are fears that make sense, fears that have logic behind them, fears you can prepare for and defend against. And then there is the particular, ancient, almost primal fear of the knock, the sound that says, "Something is here." Something knows you are here too, and it is asking, just asking, to be let in. We have built our doors to stop the world from entering without our permission. We have built them thick and strong and lockable because somewhere in our oldest memory we understand that the boundary between inside and outside is the most important boundary there is. And yet these four people heard the knock, and none of them have felt entirely safe behind a closed door since. If you are still here, if you watched all the way to this moment, then you already know what kind of person you are. You are the kind of person who needs to know, who cannot look away, who understands that the scariest things are not invented. They are remembered. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel, because every week we go deeper into the cases no one else will cover, the ones that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Subscribe right now so you never miss what comes next. If you made it all the way to the end, I want to know you were here. Drop a comment right now and write, "I heard the knock." That's all. Just those 4 words. So I can find you. So I know who in this community is brave enough to sit with the real ones. Write it right now. And if these stories stayed with you the way I think they did, hit that like button, share this video with someone tonight, and let them decide whether they're brave enough to listen. Because the door is always there, and somewhere, in some house, on some quiet street at some hour when the world has gone still, something is raising its hand, and it is about to knock.